All right. Well, good morning, everyone. This is Adam Flynn here with NAU Country. First, just want to say thank you for jumping on today's call, the NAU Country Connection call. We will be covering field insights today, so it'll be kind of a nice breather, if you will, from some of the prior calls that you may have been on where we had to jump around just a little bit from system to system to show some different things. Today, we're just going to be in one spot, nice and easy, and we're going to go into in-depth with field insights. Few admin and logistics things. I do currently have everyone on mute, which is by design. So if you could just do me a favor and keep yourself on mute throughout the call. But if you do have any questions, we do have the message board that's provided to us via the WebEx, which is what we're using today. And so if you do have any questions as you see anything, please go ahead and use that message board. We have a couple of NAU Country folks on the call with me today, and they're going to assist in answering any questions that come through on that message board. I am also recording this call, so if there's you need to see anything or want to reference something later on, we'll have this recorded and it'll be placed out on the NAU Country YouTube channel under the playlist titled NAU Country Connection. So with that being said, we're just going to go ahead and jump right in. I am sharing my screen. Hopefully everyone can see that. And what you're seeing right now is Agent Portal, the new Agent Portal. And I'll show the difference here between the new Agent Portal and the current Agent Portal that you see today. But in both regards, in order to get the field insights, you can see here with the new Agent Portal, big blue button right here in the middle of the screen. Now, if I click this button, what it's going to initially bring up for me is this search policy screen here, where you can see you can search by last name, business name, if it's an EIN, or the policy number itself, which would be great in which we're going to do here shortly. But if you need to, for example, use the prospecting tool, you'd want to select this dashboard button. And you can see when I select it, it's going to bring me to this screen here. Now, I'm actually going to close this tab down because the only difference between the new Agent Portal and the old Agent Portal is the Field Insights tab that you see here on the kind of the upper right-hand corner. When selected here, it will just automatically bring me to that same screen. The difference between obviously the new Agent Portal is I had to select that dashboard first, which was that button you saw when I first clicked the big blue Field Insights button. So just wanted to call that out as a difference in case you, in regards to navigation, in case you were using the old or current, I should say, Agent Portal versus the new beta Agent Portal. Now, for the majority of the call, we're going to be working with an actual policy I have set up for us. But before we do that, just want to real quickly touch on these two buttons here, the Create New Prospect and the View Saved Prospects. This was designed, probably about a year ago or so, with the idea in mind that though Field Insights was designed for the farmer, it was designed to assist them on their farm, their fields, in making educated decisions. We quickly realized that, boy, this can be a prospecting tool for our agents, in addition to what we designed it for originally, which again was for the farmer. So we created this ability to allow you to prospect Field Insights. And the idea is we didn't want to have to ask you guys to show a potential prospect, a potential client, a real policy that had Field Insights. In other words, showing another farmer someone else's fields. So this allows you to simply just create prospects. Now you can see there when I click the button, I get this little pop-up, and you can name it. You can name a lot of them. You can do whatever you want. But in regards to if you didn't change the name, and you continually add new prospects, which you can, it will just go into numerical order. Prospect 1, the next one would be 2, 3, so on and so forth. So if you just go, I'm just going to keep it like this. I'm going to select OK. And what it's going to do is bring me to this screen here. Now, for anyone that's familiar with Field Insights, for anyone that's familiar with Field Insights, normally what you would see when you first click into it and you're looking at a real policy is obviously the fields. Being that I just selected a prospect, we don't know where to start. We have to give it an address or search for a location. What's cool about the prospecting Field Insights is that you're not actually limited to selecting a real life field. So for example, if you wanted to find the Starbucks in Fargo, North Dakota. You can see there, you can find that, and you can look that information up. If you want to look for a town, let's say my hometown of Bram, Minnesota, a small little town in central Minnesota here, you can do so. So you're not really limited, which is great because then you can really detail these prospects towards a particular client. You can get into their area or a particular field, whatever the case may be. So in this case, you can see I just real quickly searched my hometown that I grew up in. And if I zoom in, I'm just going to zoom in over here. I'm going to grab a field. And I'm just going to click on the map. And you're going to see it's going to highlight that CLU for me. Now in this case, I could just select add, which would then allow me to kind of show a light version of Field Insights. It would essentially do what you need to do in regards to prospecting to include adding an additional field. But if I was playing part agent and I just needed to show a potential client what Field Insights can provide them, I would just probably select the single field and then click this edit button. And the reason for that is that it brings up this screen here, which may look familiar for anyone again that's used to Field Insights. From here, you can adjust the field acres. You can even play around with some kind of customization in regards to share name and farm names. But in this case, I'm just going to real quickly answer the important questions, which is the irrigation, the drainage, and if there's any drainage tiles, and I'll very quickly add a crop. We'll come back to this when we get into a real policy. So I'm just going to skip through this really fast here just to get the data in here. I'm going to go ahead and select add. And now I have the capability to show full-fledged from A to Z of Field Insights and how it works to any potential prospect. You can see here I can select all the layers, which we're going to go into in much more detail here. You can look at, oops, I just clicked a random field. You can look at the actual field card information. You can look at the different components. Anything that you would have utilized on a real policy, a real Field Insights, you can do with this prospect tool. And so I definitely just wanted to call that out. You can see here it's referenced as prospect 1 in the upper right-hand corner. You can still edit this information. And then you can also generate a prospect map book based on these fields that we're adding. In this case, I only did the one, so it wouldn't be a real big map book, but you have that ability there in the upper right-hand corner. If I want to go back, you can see here, here's the dashboard I referenced when we first initiated Field Insights from the beta agent portal. If I select that, you're going to see I get brought back here. And hopefully, there we go. You can see there's prospect 1, which we just created together. So you can use this and see the prospects you've made in the past. So again, just wanted to call that out. A great tool for our agents that potentially have some potential clients that maybe have heard of Field Insights or hadn't, and you just wanted to show them. This is the key to your success, utilizing this create new prospect or utilize any view saved prospects that you already had created in the past. For the remainder of the call, we're actually going to go ahead and just jump right into a real policy, Mr. John Doe. So in this case, I just searched for their policy number there. It's going to do a quick little load here. And what it's going to provide, which you can see here shortly, if not already, is a list of policy crop years. You can see here this particular policy already rolled into 2021 in our test environment. This isn't real life. So obviously I'm just going to use the 2020 year, but you can see we can go back as far as 3 years past into 2017 as well. For today, we're going to go ahead and just select 2020. I just click that space there, and we're brought to this screen here, which is Field Insights for anyone that has not seen it, or for anyone that has. This should look very familiar once it's done loading. Let's just close this tab to help speed the bandwidth. I am on, like I said, our test environment. I'm sure for anyone that's been on my calls in the past, you've heard me make this excuse a few times. I apologize for that. Just kind of, it is what it is. But our test environment is a little slower at times. But here we go. There we now are in Field Insights for a real policy. Like I said, Mr. John Doe here. And so let's just kind of break this down into two halves, if you will, in regards to what we're looking at. Obviously, on the right-hand side, we got our map, which mimics or looks very similar to Easy Mapping. For anyone that's familiar with Easy Mapping from within Easy Writer Pro in regards to reporting acres. And on the left-hand side, we have our field cards. So we'll kind of just start on the left-hand side here and look at our field cards first, and make our way over into the map itself, look at the layers, and then we'll end the call by looking at our different components. So on the left here, what you can see here is our field card. Each one of these field cards is associated to a actual field. So you can see there I selected the field card on the top there. It adjusted my map, zoomed it in for me, highlighted my field, just basically giving you a visual cue, a reference point to what we had selected from the field card list. As far as the data that we're actually seeing, you can see in the upper left-hand corner, we have our FSN tract and field number. Below is just a shapefile of the field. Over in the middle section here, you can see this top data is a link. You can see my mouse icon does change. And this is going to provide some just kind of quick view access to some precipitation information. So you can see there in the last 24 hours, we got 0.16 inches. And then actually that all fell after midnight. It's the same data falls there. You'll also notice the time. If we were to come back in 20 minutes, 15 minutes, even 5 minutes, and re-click this link, these times will change. This is constantly rebuilding itself as far as the data. And that's an excellent segue for me to just real quickly reference how Field Insights works in regards to where we're getting this data. We partnered with a company called Itiris ClearEgg some time ago, actually, and they kind of run the backbone of Field Insights for us. They provide a lot of the meat and potatoes for it in regards to the weather data, the soil data, growth models, all that kind of stuff. They're actually providing it. We just take that data and then change the UI to mimic our systems. And so that's basically how Field Insights works. And so that's how we're getting this data on basically a click-to-need basis. Like I said, if we were to come back and click this link in 5 minutes, you would see this 1109 change to something different, but most likely 1112, 1113, somewhere in that ballpark. But again, that's just a quick little access point for the precipitation, which again is in regards to this particular field. Below it, the acres, that's just your general field acres, not any reported acres or anything like that, just simple CLU field acres, 29.48 acres falls within this field. This is their NAU field number, just in case that's a reference point for you as agents. Does not have any connection to the actual FSA field number. This is just purely NAU field number in case you get any questions. And then finally, you can see our township range and section. If you're in an area that does not have township range and section, you would just simply see the FTF report repeated here in that space. We'll come back to the accessibility here. I just want to real quickly call out these two icons here. You'll notice on the bottom left-hand corner of the field card, we see the 100%, and we would see that probably for all the fields. If I scroll down here, it looks like it. Yep. What this is actually referencing is a mirror of easy mapping. And it's really important to keep that in mind. Sometimes it's tough being the industry we're in crop insurance. A lot of times when we think of policies, we think of acres, we think of our units on the policy. And on units, there's obviously all kinds of different share percentages, 100%, 50, 30, 30, 30, so on and so forth. 9.9 times out of 10, if you have a policyholder that's using Field Insights, they're going to see 100% here. And the reason for that is, regardless of whether it's a 50-50 policy or not, the reason for that is Field Insights is directly communicating with easy mapping. And within easy mapping, you have the ability to actually adjust the share percentage for just one field, basically as just a reference or an FYI that you can provide to your insured. If you adjust that share percentage in easy mapping on that individual field or fields, if you have multiple fields selected, it has no effect on the crop insurance policy. You're just adjusting the share percent for a field as a nice FYI for them. And if you do adjust that share percentage, that's where you're going to see this reflection here on the Field Insights. The reason I say 9.9 times out of 10, you're going to see this as 100% is because fields are very rarely edited in regards to the share percentage, mostly because the insured and yourself as agents only need to worry about the units themselves. That's where that's obviously what's going to affect the premium and the liability and so on and so forth. So if the fields were not adjusted in easy mapping, which again nearly no one does, it's going to always reflect that 100% share, which is what a field is defaulted as when it's first added to a policy. So I just want to call that out in case you have any insureds that are using Field Insights or plan on using Field Insights, and they are a 50-50 share or whatever the share percentage may be, and they see this 100%, no need to worry. And again, it's just a simple representation of what the fields listed on the policy, not the actual units or the policy itself. Basically, the same story can be applied to this second icon here, which is the farm name. Again, thinking in regards to crop insurance and the policy, we typically see the farm name on the unit. This is pulling in the farm names that may have been applied to the individual fields within easy mapping, not units, but fields. Again, this happens more often than the share percent, but still not very often at all, where the fields are not given individual farm names. So you would normally see this blank. You can see here this field below, I did put in test just to show you what that looks like. But again, this test, what we see here, was a farm name I applied to just this field, not the unit that it may have fallen under. So just wanted to call these two out because they do cause a little bit of confusion, especially for insureds that are really in tune with their policy and check their scheduled insurances and know where the share percentages fall for the units, farm names for units, so on and so forth. Sometimes they'll see this description and get a little concerned. Again, these two icons are just direct mirrors of what data is in easy mapping for the individual field. All right, pretty much killed that to death. So we'll go ahead and just move forward then. So back to the accessibility status here, you can see that this particular field is marginal. Looks like it probably got a little bit more rain than some of the other fields, just looking at that top link there. This is a live status, just like the rain, the precipitation data as well. So as things dry out, as the wind starts blowing and drying things up again, this may change to good, or if some more rain came in or XYZ as far as different weather components, it may move into a poor status. But this does change live, and it's not a set in stone status that you see in the morning and you gotta wait till next morning to see that again. This will update as it goes throughout the day. And then finally, we have our edit field button. This may look familiar as we basically looked at the same thing when we were looking at that first prospect field insights. So you can see here up top, the field properties. These three questions, though don't need to be answered, are recommended. Nice thing about it is once you answer them, you never have to answer them again for that field. But this just helps build some data on the component side, these three questions here, which we'll reference here a little bit later when we get to those components. And then we have our user acreage. And then finally, we have our RMA crop insurance acreage. I'm going to reference last week's call just a little bit. So if you weren't on that call, I'll apologize. I'll try to explain as best as I can without taking up too much time. But on last week's call, we looked at how we can utilize field insights to report acres. And if you recall, we started out by inputting crop information, playing the part of farmer, into our user acreage slot here, which you can see we already have some corn acres, so on and so forth, the genetic diversity, which in this case is just asking the how many day corn or the seed, and this would change based on the crop. But again, this is just simply the user or the farmer inputting their crop information for that particular field, and then we brought that over into easy mapping. Today, I have the opportunity to show you what that looks like from the reverse side or the opposite of that's those procedures. So you'll see here this particular field shows soybeans, but it has those two asterisks next to it. If I select the edit field button, what you're going to see is now we have the user information, which is that soybeans we see, but we also see under the RMA crop insurance acreage tab, corn acres. And I purposely made these not match to simply call this out. To basically first start out with, why do we see corn here? This particular policy, which though fake, I was able to go into easy mapping via Easy Writer Pro and actually report acres as if it was a normal year. I had my mapped acreage report. I sat down with John Doe, we got signatures. We real life reported acres right there in easy mapping like you would on a normal year. Well, there's a two-way street. I mean, you may have heard me reference that before with Field Insights, between Field Insights and Easy Mapping. And when I reported those acres in Easy Writer Pro, that acreage information then traveled over to Field Insights and automatically updated this particular section. The reason we did that, it saves your farmer time in case they want to use field insights, but don't want to have to deal with inputting this user acreage. Now they just got their crop insurance acres rolled over automatically. But as you can see, we still do not want to deny the farmer from inputting his own crop in case he wants to just to use field insights for some fun FYIs or whatever the case may be. So in this case, I wanted to call that out. You can see, though this corn acres, these 16 acres of corn, if this was a real policy, what is reported on the policy for this field. It is what he's getting charged liability or premium on. It's what his liability is based off of, so on and so forth. He can still come in the field insights and input a different crop and user on the user acreage tab here or section. It won't have any effect on the policy, but I just wanted to call that out. And the reason for soybeans being the one that shows up on the actual field card, again, we just simply want to honor that this was a farmer tool from the beginning, and if the farmer wants to put in a soybeans, that's what he's going to be able to see on the field card. We can still utilize this corn information, which I'll show when I get to the growth model part, but as far as just the visibility on the field card, you're always going to see the user information before the crop insurance information. So just wanted to call that out for you guys. We can continue to add still user lines if we needed to, add additional crops. You would not be denied there. Just to highlight, the user acreage does not have to match the crop insurance acreage from a field insights standalone standpoint. It's just there to allow the user to play with field insights if that's something they wish to do. And then last but not least, I'm going to grab one more field and just show you. I'm going to jump back in that edit field button. This is a good example of the user, John Doe here, didn't worry about inputting any information because he knew that his agent was going to get his acres reported in Hydra Pro. In this case, you can see the corn acres came in, so we would just use the corn acres as the actual acreage or the crop for that field. So again, you also are not required to put in the crop if we can get a crop insurance acreage data to pre-fill for us, which will happen automatically every time acres are reported from within Hydra Pro. All right, so that pretty much covers field cards there on the left-hand side. So now let's real quickly focus on the map itself. As far as icons here, this icon here will zoom to the farm view, which basically just deselects whatever field I had selected and brings me back to the original screen. This will bring me to my location, not relevant since this is an Iowa policy. This would bring me all the way up to Ramsey, Minnesota. And then we have our zoom in, zoom outs. And then this is your opacity. So if we had a layer on, you can see, you can change that opacity. As far as the layers themselves, again, I'm just going to select a field just so we have a reference point that's easier to see. And we're going to select this drop down, the layer. Now, for anyone that's familiar with Field Insights or has been in there before, this list may look larger than you last saw, and that would be a true statement. We did add a lot of different layers to our soil. Real quick, mute. Someone jumped off mute there. We did add a lot of new layers to our soil category from within the layer section here. Due to the amount of layers that the user can select, or that you as an agent can even select, and just time restraint, I'm not going to go into every single one of them, but I am going to grab at least one layer from each category, and we'll grab a couple from the soil category as well. So starting up in the radar/forecast layer, pretty straightforward. If we've all been to weather.com, it's basically the same data that you would see there. If you can see here, we can look at the radar for the last 2 hours, the last 24 hours, or forecast for the next 24 hours. So let's just do that last 24 hours since I know there was a storm that rolled through. You can see here that it's going to reference today's date and the time that we started, or excuse me, that we started the session of Field Insights itself. And if I hit play, hopefully it doesn't take too long here, it's going to play 1 hour increments of the last 24 hours. So you can see there, here's 4 o'clock yesterday, and it would just continue to roll over. And if I zoom out really far here, well, I can't once it started. Hopefully we see a storm here roll through here pretty soon, since we know that it came in after midnight. There it comes in. I'm a little zoomed in. I probably shouldn't have selected a field there, but we saw that green roll through very quickly, which looks like it came through early this morning. So that's our radar. Again, I'm going to real quickly actually hit farm home, And then I'm going to play it one more time just so you can see that radar, which will come through here shortly. But it's just general weather information. Again, you could see it on weather.com or any other weather site you may use. The convenient thing about Field Insights, obviously, we have all of our fields that we can then reference as a standalone point for where that storm may or may not hit. The precipitation, these three are the only ones that have that playback functionality. The remaining layers on this list are all going to work essentially the same way, where we're going to see some color changes on the map, and then we just reference the legend that we have available here on the map itself. So our precipitation category has the accumulation for the last hour, last 24 hours, the next 24 hours, that's obviously an estimate, and then the probability of precipitation in the next 24 hours. So if I just select this second one here, the accumulation of the last 24 hours, you're going to see my map change. Again, we're referencing this particular field. I can then take that color down. All right, looks like we're somewhere between 0.1 and 0.2, which makes sense as I can see that when I first jumped into Field Insights, where we're at 0.16 for this particular field. And I always use this example or this layer as just an example to show that what's actually happening is, and again, this is backed up by ClearEgg, is a giant Doppler of the entire country. And so we can see that data. Now, obviously, if John Doe was in here, he's not going to be too concerned about what's happening in Texas, as he would want to see what's just happening on his fields. But I just wanted to give this as a visual to show you what is actually being run on the map itself when we select some of these different layers. I'm just going to click my field card again. That's going to zoom me right back in to my field here. Next one is air temperature. Again, pretty just like precipitation. We're going to get some color changes, and then we're going to reference that to the legend. Pretty warm looks like in Iowa here, 85 degrees, give or take. Simply just another tool that they can use to make any educated decisions they may need to make on their fields. Wind speeds, great quick tool for if they're looking to spray or whatever the case may be. So I can select, for example, current wind gust, somewhere between 7.5 miles an hour. Okay, yep, that's probably good to go. I can go out and spray or whatever the case may be. So again, a lot of these layers are designed with the idea of quick access point to some important information to make educated decision on their fields. Wind speeds, let's see what I need to worry about in case I want to spray or avoid drift, things like that. I'm going to skip soil. We're going to save that one for last. Evapo Transportation. This one came out of the out west. And so if you're out west, this was a request that came out for you guys. You can see I'm actually going to zoom all the way out because this wouldn't be a really relevant piece of data for our Iowa policy. But basically, what Evapo, and actually, I'm not even going to try to sound like I know what it is. This little icon here, we're going to see a lot throughout a bunch of different layers, but it explains what the layer is actually telling us. In this particular example, I'm actually just going to read it. I'm not insulting your intelligence, but I just want to read it in case you can't see it due to me sharing my screen. But it reads as, the combined processes of evaporation and transportation, known as Evapo Transpiration, ET, plays a key role in water cycle. Precipitation that falls on land can either run off in streams and rivers, soak into the ground, or return to the atmosphere through Evapo Transpiration. Water that evaporates returns directly to the atmosphere, while water that is transpired is taken up by plant roots and lost to the atmosphere through the leaves. So basically, I'm not going to try to explain that. You heard what I read, but it was a request that came out west. As it obviously you can see as I move west, we start changing color there, where this becomes more and more in play just due to the different climates. So that's what that particular layer is. Again, I'll reference this icon here, which will help explain some of these different layers, as I didn't know what they were the first time I saw them as well. Drought, this is going to be the Palmer Drought Index. So you can see here, that's pretty straightforward. The yellow is abnormally dry. The dark purple is we're in an exceptionally legit drought. So you can see here that a little bit through the southwest here, a little bit drier than normal. But that's basically what it's telling us here. So if this was a layer that they being the farmer were utilizing, if I click my field, you're going to see nothing shows up. And that's why I zoomed out just so I could show you that data. Just wanted to call that out in case the farmer calls you and says, hey, I selected the drought index and I'm not seeing anything in my fields. It may just be because their area is obviously not experiencing that data, and so it would just be blank. So that's just something to keep in mind in case you do get any of those kind of questions. The wetlands, again, this is not going to be real relevant to my particular policy that I have here in Iowa. But if I were to scroll down to, for example, Florida, make sure we cover all parts of the nation here. You would obviously, as you would imagine, let me zoom out farther. You would imagine you're going to begin to see some of this data. There we go. Good Lord. As we get zoomed in, this particular layer, you do need to zoom in a little farther, or a little closer, I should say, but then you'd begin to see the pockets of the different pieces of data in regards to wetlands. And again, if you have any questions in regards to what these are, you can click that icon and it's going to provide you with some data in regards to that particular layer. So let's go back to Iowa here. I've selected my farm there, just to go back to the fields. And let's look at some of these different soil layers. These are probably the more popular layers, which makes sense. As you can see, it is the biggest category with the most layers provided. Starting with our map units, this is a newer one. You can see when I select that, the field, obviously the map changed. But in this case, this is one of the only layers that doesn't have a legend. And the reason for that is that if I click a field, which means this icon needs to be selected, I should call that out. If I click this button, it's just going to be an informational icon and nothing's going to click, it's just going to actually select the field. But if I have this icon as this, which will be the default icon when you first select map units, it'll allow you to click any field, and it's going to provide this little pop-up. And this pop-up would take probably 20 minutes just to cover in regards to all the different information that's provided for the field that we selected. So I won't go through it all, but I will just scroll through and just kind of call out a couple things. You can see there right off the top, farmland class may or may not be important. You can see there we have the Iowa corn suitability rating. There's some different, they get into water table depth in regards to access to water. Here we go, the availability of water. The class, so you can see here moderately well drained, in regards to the wettest when it's most wet. Lots of information here. I don't know that I would have time to cover it in an hour call in regards to what we're looking at here. Lots and lots of good information that's provided. I'm pretty sure somewhere along the way you're going to see also the soil classes. You can see wind erodibility. Like I said, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but there's just a lot of different information that's provided when you're using this map units layer. And you're not limited to any field. You can go outside the field. So you can see I just selected in the bottom left-hand corner, which is not a policy field, and I would still be provided all of this information. So one of the newer layers, a great tool to really just get out there and kind of look at and play with. Soil temperatures, slope gradients, you name it, it's going to probably be in your elevations. The annual air temperature, the low value, it's going to go into the highs. It's just remarkable some of the information you can find in this little menu that pops up when you have the map units layer selected. If it seems small, you can see here you can expand that out and then really see the information pop up, or that provide it to you a little bit more easier to read. So I would highly recommend, this is just one of those layers that I think best just to get out and click and play around with and find some of the information that may be relevant to your area in regards to the data that's being provided for this layer. And again, that's found under the soil category. The next one I'm going to select is soil moisture. This one does drive a little bit of questions in at times. This is technically what we consider the volumetric soil moisture for the soil of any given field. So if I were to say select my field here again, obviously they're all blue. But basically what it's telling me is that if I were to take a 1 by 1 by 1 cube of soil out of this ground, perfect cube, and compress all of the non-organic matter, your rocks, your soil, so on and so forth, it may reduce down to 25% of the original size of the cube. And then I did the same thing for organic matter, your roots, your insects, your plant life, so on and so forth. I may get another 45% of the original size of the cube. Well, that remaining 35% would then reflect the open space where moisture lived in this soil. So this is what this data here is telling us for the soil moisture. A couple other ones here I'll just real quickly call out. The Hydra class, this is kind of cool. You can see here once I select it, we get our legend back. And again, if you're curious what the Hydra class is, you can select this icon here. It's going to give you a definition. And this is in regards to the pooling of water and what happens to that soil as it continues to remain pooled up with moisture on top and so on. Then it breaks down each one of these colors here a little bit more definitively. So just again, a lot of different layers. My best suggestion is just get out there. If you have a policy, one of your policy holders has a policy that's mapped, you can come out and play with field insights. Granted, you'd be playing with their field insights, but you have that ability. But I really recommend for some of these layers, just going out there and just clicking and looking around and seeing what's available. We're already at 11:36. I want to make sure I have time for my components. So again, I can't cover all of the layers. So really, highly recommend it. Get out there and play with some of these things and see what's available, and then share that with your insured, obviously. So with the layers more or less covered, we're going to bounce over to the component side of things. Though, and actually I'm going to use this field as my example because it's going to have that, if you recall, the user crop information and the RMA crop insurance or RMA crop insurance acreage that we reported in Easy Router Pro. So on the component side, though it provides still a lot of great data, it won't be as visual. You can see the list is similar in regards to that layer drop down where they're broken down into categories. So I'll grab a couple of components from each category, but it's still going to be, the data we're going to see is going to be derived from this field's data that we've selected. Again, this is where these three questions become important. The irrigated, no, yes. Surface drainage, poor, average, good. And if there's any drainage tile installed in the field. These questions will become important from this point on. So we'll select the component list, and we'll just start with something simple like our current conditions. Pretty straightforward piece of data. Again, pretty much what you would find on a weather.com AccuWeather type deal. The only difference here obviously is now we're going to reference this data down to our individual fields. We can see here at this current time it's 81 degrees out. Last hour of precipitation, last 24 hours, the 90 days, and then year to date on precipitation. So that's kind of a cool piece of information. And then the last you see over here on the soil, you can see the soil temperature and then the 2-meter water availability, that's 62%. And then again, you'll see that status of accessibility. Now within the current conditions component, the user actually has the ability to adjust the accessibility. And what's cool about that is that if this was changed by John Doe, let's say he got in his truck and drove out to some of the fields and noticed, I could probably get out there and harvest if it was later in the year, or plant or spray, whatever the case may be. So the good status is probably fair, but it's still pretty wet, and I consider that to be marginal. John Doe can come out here and change that, which you can see I just did, and then Field Insights will learn from that. And it'll basically readjust its scale, if I can make it as simple as possible, a scale of 1 to 10, which accommodates for weather, wind, the soil, everything that's in play here. It'll readjust that scale to determine this accessibility based on what John Doe selected. So it's I don't want to say it's learning from the user, but in a sense it is. It's learning from the user and again readjusting to provide the most accurate data that John Doe in this case wants to see. So if he's using Field Insights, he does have the ability to adjust this particular piece as it would be displayed on the field card. If I were to refresh this, it would show marginal here on the card, but being that we're in test, I'm not going to mess with my internet and possibly deal with any slow load times. It actually might do it for us right there. Nope, not quite. So that's our current conditions, which is found in the field conditions category of components. The forecast works very similar. The exception is that we're not looking at current, we're looking at the next 7 days, but it's essentially the same data. And then the planting conditions, we'll look at this one real quick. Let that one load. So it essentially takes the, I'm going to click the drop down one more time. It takes the forecast and combines it with the field accessibility broken down a little bit more in detail. So you can see here, we got today and then going forward, some of the different weather conditions that it's going to be dealing with. Wind speeds with these little arrows, it may be hard to see being that I'm sharing my screen, but it does show the directions of those wind speeds here for each day. Chance of precipitation, pretty straightforward there. The amount, the accumulation, soil temperatures, and then this field accessibility as well. And you can see here, if I was to change this to hourly, which may be more of a convenient thing for something like today where it looks like it's going to be raining, you can see here you can adjust. It looks like the rain doesn't come till later, but you can adjust that from a daily to an hourly rate as well. And again, this is planting conditions, which is essentially just combining the field accessibility with the 7-day forecast. Next category is our spraying category. I'm just going to click one on this example, and this is because it's one of the most common components that's used, which is the spray window advisor. The other two options or components we had available are basically just lighter versions of what we're looking at here, as this is one of the newer components that we had added to Field Insights about a year ago or so, give or take. The way it works is you can see here that I have a set of criteria that I can adjust. And based on that criteria, it's going to build an advisor of when I should and should not spray my fields, in this case, this particular field. You're not required to select really any of them for that matter, but you're not required to select a certain number of them. You can do just one, you can do two, you can do them all if you like, again, playing the part of John Doe here. So for example, if I wanted to avoid any wind direction out of the west, I can go ahead and select that. And this would now be one of the criteria that I set for my spray window. If I wanted to set some limitations on temperatures, I could do that here. Rain-free time. Let's do that because we have some rain in the future here, so let's adjust that. Leaf wetness, which is going to be just as you can see there, select optimum leaf surface moisture levels. It's just going to be wet or dry, pretty simple there. Your delta T, I'll be the first one to admit, I had no idea what that was until I first clicked into the actual criteria, but it explains it right here in case that's something that's important to your insured. You can select it here as well. I'm going to just not do it because, again, I don't really know what it means. But you can see we can also adjust our wind speeds, limitations on that. Avoid any inversion, which is simply when hot air, excuse me, when hot air gets trapped underneath cold air. Let's just say we want to avoid any high inversion. We can select any 24-hour max rainfalls, field conditions, which is essentially the status of the accessibility there, or any humidity. We can select min and max on that as well. So let's say that these are the only three criteria that I am concerned about. So I'm going to go ahead and select submit. And it's going to build today and then I believe 5 days into the future. Looks like the only day that we would have some blackout periods is on June 5th. Now I'm going to select this view criteria, and again, I'm in test. So the criteria that caused this particular time to black out may not show up. It's happened in test a few times, but what's supposed to happen is let's say that June 5th was the day I wanted to spray. Well, shoot, what's going on? Why can't I? If I select my criteria, there you go, rain-free time, you can see it failed during those periods of time. So if I wanted to use June 5th as my day to spray, looks like I'm doing it earlier in the morning if that's something I want to do. And so what this is essentially telling me is that on June 5th, that was the day I wanted, I'm not getting any wind from the west. I'm not getting any rain, obviously, during that time. I can't remember what my other criteria was, but whatever the third one was, the inversion risk, it's not going to be in effect during this time limit. June 4th, let's see why that particular period, again, looks like some rain. Let's grab another couple days and see if we can't find another criteria that dinged. Looks like the rain-free was the winner this time. And so that's but essentially you're seeing what's happening is that it will just tell you based on the criteria you've selected when are some opportune times to get out and spray your fields. If you need to reset the criteria that you had selected, you can see here that you can just select the spray window advisor once more, and it should reload here shortly. Or no, sorry, show criteria was, there you go. You can bring it right back to this screen here and adjust, turn them off, add new ones, whatever the case may be. So you can readjust those to include clear them all if you need to restart from the very beginning. So that was our spray window advisor, which again obviously falls under the spraying category. Upcoming spray windows and leaf canopy wetness are essentially just very, very light versions of the spray window advisor. Crop growth and harvest, we're going to click both of these as these two are definitely some of the more popular ones, starting with our growth model. Now the growth model really does have no effect on probably making any educated decisions on the field itself, but just because of the data as far as how it's provided and what it's providing, it's just a really cool tool that farmers have just seemed to enjoy and utilize a lot. And the growth model is just what, you know, the name gives it away. It's going to provide the ideal growth model for the crop if everything works out as planned. Now, if you recall, we have two different crops on this field card. We have the soybeans, which is the user inputted, and then we have the corn, which was that came over from the policy itself from within EasyWriter Pro. If your farmer has two different crops on the field, it's always going to reference what the user inputted. If they want to look at their actual crop that was reported on their policy, you can select this dropdown, and you can see there I can select the corn. Notice the asterisk. It's kind of hard to see probably because I'm sharing my screen, but just above my mouse icon, you can see the asterisk, and that just shows here, denotes the RMA/crop insurance acreage. So if I select corn, it's going to rebuild that growth model. And we can see that here. Now we're not looking at soybeans anymore. We're looking at corn. As far as what we're looking at on this particular line graph, each one of these stopping points is a growth stage. So on June 10th, if everything goes as planned, which is just in a week, looks like, we'll hit the 3-leaf stage for this particular crop, which again, in case that seems late, this corn was planted on May 21st. So that's what this is based on. If everything goes again as planned, on September 16, it will become mature. And then obviously we move into the harvest period where we can wait for that infield dry down and then obviously harvest. But each one of these growth stages, or each one of these stopping points, is a reference point to a growth stage. On the left-hand side, you can see these are our growing degree days as far as you go, on the left here. And then it's kind of hard to see, but the blue shade in the background is the chance of frost. So you can see there, this is Iowa, makes sense, but mid-September starts to rise. Once we get into November, we're pretty close to pretty much 100% frost chance. With that being said, that's an opportunity just to real quickly call out a future enhancement that's coming. Actually, it is here now, but it's this not the time of the year, so we're not really marketing it real hard. But I do want to give you all a heads up that Field Insights was updated with what we are calling frost alerts, and it's something that your farmer can set up from within their Field Insights. And the way it'll work is simply that it'll alert their via the app or email that there's a potential frost that's going to hit that next night or the coming night. So that's a new feature that's coming. We're going to talk about it much more in depth a little bit later this summer into early fall, but just wanted to call that out as just something that is available in Field Insights as well. That it's just something your farmer would need to elect themselves if they're going to want to utilize that feature. So again, that was in regards to frost. Back to the actual growth model though. You can see here, this is very visual in regards to the line graph. We also, if you scroll down, currently have each growth stage listed with a definition for each one as far as what they'll look, and then the date that those different things happened. Now, for example, if I came in and decided that, nope, the projection was off by a couple days, and it didn't emerge on May 30th, it emerged on the 27th. Just real quick before I change that, let's just keep an eye on that June 2nd date there. So I'm going to say that I changed this to May 27th. That's when it first emerged. You're going to see this status change from projected to observed, and then it's going to readjust all of the different growth stages based on that observed growth stage. So you can see here that changed from June 2nd to now May 30th for that V11 leaf growth stage. And that adjustment will go all the way down to the bottom, to even when it goes to the final maturity rate, which if you recall, I believe it was originally September 16. Now we're seeing September 9. So kind of just bringing it back full circle here. The growth model, though, doesn't really have any direct effect in regards to making an educated decision on the field. It's still just a really cool tool just to see it. Hey, this is where I should be in regards to ballpark on growth stage. How's my crop doing? Maybe I do need to spray a little bit more, things like that. But essentially, it's just a really nice FYI tool that the farmer can utilize to just make a comparison to their crop and how it's doing on that particular field. With that being said, so we now have a final growth stage of September 9. Based on that data, the next component from within this category is the harvest advisor. And these two communicate with each other, particularly, or specifically, I should say, with this final growth stage. So when I select the harvest advisor, what it's going to do is take that final growth stage, September 8 there, or excuse me, there's September 9. You can see I highlighted the last dot there, or the final growth stage. And what this allows the user to do is select their target in-field dry down. Now, granted, this is, it's June, so things can change, but based on the projections it's got in regards to weather and things like that, if everything was to go as planned, looks like on October 7th, we would hit our in-field dry down target percentage. Then that's when the farmer should try to get out there and harvest their crop. I can give you a real life testimony in regards to this particular component. Mark Mossman's the Senior Vice President for Claims here at NAU Country, but he also farms in Iowa, ironically enough. And he utilized this particular component and compared the target moisture, which I don't recall what his target was, but it was off by 0.5% compared to what the data he got from the actual elevator. So just kind of a cool story, just to reference how accurate Field Insights is, specifically the Harvest Advisor in-field dry down component itself. As far as how it works, you basically saw what I did there. You select your target moisture. You can adjust this slide bar at the bottom to see how much data you want to see as far as on the grid above. And you can obviously see what's happening there. And then you can just grab it, slide down and see what each day and the estimated grain moisture for that particular day, and then just make your way down to when the two lines cross. And that's how the Harvest Advisor works. Soils, two components here. I'll be honest, not heavily used by our farmers, but it's a cool tool in either way. You can see here when I select the soil moisture and topsoil temperature, we can see the soil moisture depth from 0 to 10 centimeters or 0 to 200 centimeters. Then you can also break this down into 14 days, which will be 7 days in the past, and then 7 days into the future as estimations. Or you can select 100 days, which will still be 7 days into the 7 days into the future, but it'll go back 100 or 93 days, I should say, into the past in regards to the soil moisture and topsoil temperatures. And you can see that temperature is up top here, and the data below here is your moisture. Now, maybe kind of tougher to see because I'm sharing my screen, but as I move my mouse, left and right on this grid, this data here is adjusting to reflect where my mouse icon is. So you can see the date, the moisture percentage, and then that temperature adjust as you move throughout or move left to right on this grid. It's kind of a cool tool. Again, that if the farmer needs to look at the soil moisture or topsoil temperatures, he can do so with this particular component. And then last but not least, the historical weather. This one's definitely used sometimes just for fun, sometimes used for real life, need to look at some different things in regards to their actual crop insurance policy. But the name gives it away. What it allows you to do is to look into the past and see a whole list of data regarding that field. So we'll start from the top here. Basically, you want to start with selecting your range. I've gone back as far as a couple of years. but you can see here if I wanted to go back to say last summer. So let's go July 1. We'll just look at July of last year. So you can see here I've selected July 1 as my start date, July 31st as my end date. I'm going to keep it in the daily time frame because that would make, if I did hourly, that would make this grid real busy. And I'm going to keep it as a chart for now. I'll explain what these two different options are as well, but I'm going to select as a chart. So I'm going to go ahead and hit go. It'll load real quick there. And you can see here then July 1 is my new starting date. As I scroll down, first set of category, pretty straightforward, just your general weather conditions. Looks like it was pretty sunny for the first week of July. Not real windy. Here's our average wind speeds. Here's our air temperatures, which is going to include your highs and lows. Again, your humidity, which will also be highs and lows. Dew points, high lows. Soil temperatures, high lows. And again, this is all for last July of last year. The soil moisture availability during that time for the first 10 centimeters and then also the 200 centimeter. Let's go down a little farther there. Your precipitation amount. Looks like just a little bit showed up there, but not enough to accumulate much there because that last category is your precipitation accumulation, and both of these are in inches. Now, if you recall, I mentioned that I was going to keep it in chart. I'm a visual guy. I like the pictures. I like the fancy colors. But for some of you, maybe you're more of a number person, then you'd want to select the table. And what that's going to do is basically make it look more like an Excel spreadsheet. Still the exact same data. Instead of our dates moving left to right, our dates now go down the list. You can see there July 1's first as we make our way down. And then each one of those categories we saw earlier, we just see now running left to right. Speaking of numbers person, I would prefer to see it more like an Excel spreadsheet. The last button there is our CSV, which you can see automatically downloaded an Excel spreadsheet there on my monitor, and it just takes the data we're seeing there. Show it up on my other monitor. Give me 2 seconds here to grab that for you, and created an Excel spreadsheet. So that's kind of a cool tool as well in case the farmer wanted to just track or monitor different things for each month in regards to making decisions on, well, from the last 10 years, July has been doing this. They can, they can look at that and then start making an educated decision on different things they may want to do or maybe not do. But that's another tool that they have available to them via Field Insights, utilizing, in this case, the historical weather component. And that, ladies and gentlemen, essentially is Field Insights. There were still obviously things that I couldn't cover just due to time. Obviously we didn't get all the components. We obviously didn't get all the layers just because there's so many of them. But if you do have any questions, my best suggestion is first just get out there and play with it and click around. There's really not a whole lot of damage you can do to it if you're going to even use your real policy. But if you want to get out and play, that prospecting tool is a great tool to utilize. You can get out there and do whatever you want with it and really see what Field Insights is capable of. But if you do have any other questions, your marketing staff, your underwriters, they're definitely on par with knowing how Field Insights works and the different pieces of information. So I would definitely recommend starting with them. Otherwise, we'll also have this video, like I mentioned earlier in the call, on our YouTube channel as a reference point as well. And then we also do have our user guide available to you via the agent portal as well. One last thing I forgot to mention, there was a request that came in from one of our marketing reps. Keep in mind when you are using Field Insights, your browser. So I'm a Google Chrome guy personally. You can see here in the bottom left here, I do have Internet Explorer and Firefox as well. I am a Google Chrome guy, and we have noticed at times that if you are an Internet Explorer person, which is fine, which is really no one better than the other, but Internet Explorer doesn't always play as nicely with Field Insights and some of the different things that are available as Chrome or Firefox does. Ideally, it should work, but again, we've just noticed at times that it doesn't always play as nice. So if you are using Field Insights, you may want to give Chrome or Firefox a shot, as it just seems to work a little bit better. So I just wanted to call that out, excuse me, again, as that was a request that came in from one of our marketing reps. So I haven't seen any questions coming on the chat, the message board, which is A-OK. So I'm going to assume that we are all good to go. So I'll just end the call by just again saying thank you for taking some time out of your morning or afternoon if you're out east to attend. And I hope you all have a great rest of the day. And thank you for attending. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.